Hello and welcome. Today we've got a little something different for you here. I have my good friend Jack Mckenny, baseball writer for Fansided. We're here giving you guys a playoff preview for the Major League Baseball. It should be pretty exciting. We had a decent regular season and some good matchups coming up for the postseason. So let's get into it. And I'm gonna start with, or both of us are going to start with some disappointments that missed the playoffs. As most people know, I'm a Chicago sports fan. I'm a White Sox fan. And we were talking about it before the show started. I said a big thing of it was they're not showing up consistently. They were minus 200 to win the division, and they come in every single day thinking that they're the best team there. And you saw flashes that they played like the best team. And realistically and talent wise, they were the best team, but they're kind of waiting around for that day to come where everything clicks and then they run away with the division, but it never really came. And then that you have pitching inconsistency with the one of the highest paid bullpens in the MLB that couldn't get it done, your defensive problems, and then two switch hitters who are supposed to be sluggers and Yasmani Grandal and Yohan Moncada, who came and did basically nothing offensively this season. Moncada's got a good glove at third base, but he was hurt a lot. So, and then injuries, obviously. And then one more team that I wanted to touch on. There's a few disappointments, but this is another one. And I might be stealing this from MLB Network, but it's the Milwaukee Brewers. And I think this stemmed from, I want to hear your opinion on this, but I think a lot of this was them trading Josh Hader because they were cruising with that division before. And then once they lost him, they couldn't finish a game anymore.
Yeah, I mean, they completely collapsed. And first off, I totally agree what you said about the White Sox. It was a year full of inconsistencies. Obviously, they finished 500, I believe. Am I right? They were 81 and 81.
On the spot.
They had some really good players. They had Jose Abreu, who was awesome. They had Dylan Cease, who was awesome. But yeah, they just could never really get that consistent winning brand. And it didn't make sense to me because Sam, they're in this awful division. I mean, you
I
play the
know.
Tigers 20 times, you play the Royals 20 times. Heck, I mean, the Twins aren't even that. I mean, the Twins are good, but their starting pitching isn't that great. And the White Sox are just better than them.
Yeah, they
So
lost the season series to the Royals too, which you can't do. Like you just
yeah,
can't do that.
it's unacceptable. So it's really frustrating for the White Sox. They've got 55 million in cap next year, and they got to decide what they want to do. But it's a winnable division, and that's something that they can look at. But
100%.
the interesting thing about the Hater trade is I was actually in favor of it. And I realize now that I'm wrong because this was a trade that didn't really take into mind the clubhouse. The clubhouse, the Brewers clubhouse and the Brewers players hated this trade. And I think it really collapsed the clubhouse. And I think the morale was down. And really, between the Brewers and Cardinals, whoever won that division was going to make the playoffs, and whoever
Yep.
didn't win that division was not going to make it. And
Yeah, Devin Williams was in shock when it happened, and he was
yeah,
like, "Oh shit!" He's a great setup guy, like an unbelievable setup guy. But he was like, "Shit!" Like I'm the guy now, like to close these. Like I don't have because I mean it's a different mindset when you're going in there thinking, "All right, I'm gonna go do my thing here," and then Hater's gonna come in and shove next inning versus, "Oh, you're Hater now, and no one's in front of you."
well, and the thing was, is it all made sense in my head because I was like, since I think it was May 26th, Devin Williams had not given up an earned run. So I was like, perfect. They trade Hader, Devin Williams fills in at the closer role. They get all these prospects. That's great. Also, another thing that I really believe in for the playoffs is anything can happen, and the best chance you have of winning the World Series is just making the playoffs every year. And that's
Exactly.
why the Brewers did that trade. That's their philosophy, but it just didn't work out.
Yeah,
It
keep
wasn't
playing postseason baseball, and it's gonna unless you're some teams, but like it's a lot of times you're gonna keep getting further and further.
exactly. I mean, the perfect case is the Braves, right? I mean, they're really highly seeded in all these playoffs, and they always lose. And then, of course, they lose Ronald Acuna, who's their best player last year, and they
Matter.
have no business beating the Dodgers and then beating the Astros, but they win the World Series. Like that's just the playoffs in a nutshell. Like you never
Putting it
know.
together, everyone stepped up. I mean, that's what it comes down to in the end, and that's what's going to happen here, especially as we get into these wild card matchups. It's like a lot of these. I mean, because you look at it, the pitchers. Like I have on my note sheet here the pitchers listed for the start or game ones. You're thinking, how could any team lose a game with this guy? But you watch playoff baseball, it's almost like a different game. Every
Un-
like Every
It
game you must win. And obviously that's goes without saying, but everything's played so much differently. Hitters are going up there with a little more on their mind. Pitchers are going in with a little more on their mind. The crowd's going crazy. It's awesome. I love it. But yeah,
I
anything
mean,
can happen.
it's higher velocity. I mean, one of the things that I look for now, based on last year, I had the Brewers winning the World Series, and I did this based on the fact that they had Corbin Burns, Brandon Woodruff, and Willie Peralta. They were all pitching incredible, and they had that top three, and that's what you need to win a World Series. But the Brewers had no offense, so they
Yeah.
lost like every game to the Braves, like 2-1 or 2-0, because they couldn't hit. So you got to be able to hit in the playoffs. You got to be
Yeah.
able to hit elite pitching.
It ended up the Rowdy Tellez was their best offensive weapon in that first playoff series, which like don't get me wrong, I like him. He's a good player, but like that's not gonna cut it.
Yeah, Yelich didn't show up. Avisel Garcia was awesome. I remember, yeah, Tellez had that home run against someone last year, and they
Yeah,
won
I
game
think it was a
one.
walk-off, but that was like their one shining moment. And then because then it came down to, like I said before, it was Williams and Hader. They couldn't make any mistakes.
Yeah,
They never
well,
had any support or anything.
yeah. I mean, they just couldn't hit. So you gotta be able to do you gotta be able to hit elite pitching, and you gotta be able to quality starting pitching really helps in the playoffs, and
It
that's
really
one
does.
thing I'll say. I mean,
If a
you know,
starter can eat 7 innings, it can eat even six sometimes. If a starter can eat that much, and that's the thing that hurt my Sox last year was that their pitchers were the starters were down 60 pitches in the second inning against Houston. And that Houston was and still is an incredible batting order. But I mean that's not going to cut it. You might win a game, which they did, and they saw, but that was because every pitcher was lights out after they pulled Cease early. But it's not sustainable. Like that's not going to win you a World Series.
I mean, yeah, I mean, one of the things you got to have a good bullpen, because one of the things about playoff baseball, like you're saying, is working the counts and getting those pitchers out early, getting those
Yeah,
guys to 100 pitches. And the Astros are perfect at that. That's why I
they're
love
very
the
good. Yeah,
Astros. That's why they've made it to the ALCS 7 years in a row. I mean,
yeah, and
they're
I
just
think they will again this year. I
they're
don't
just
think the Yankees have a shot against them, but you never know. Whoever wins this Cleveland Tampa series might. And that's a perfect segue into our wild card matchups. First on my list here, I have the Cleveland Guardians versus the Tampa Bay Rays. I absolutely hate the Cleveland Guardians. Why? Because first of all, they beat my team in the division when they should not have come even close to beating them.
no business.
And every player comes out there and just makes themselves a pain in the ass to play against. And it's so annoying when you're not a fan of them. It's probably a great time to be a Guardians fan, however many of them there are. But yeah, and they've been pitching so well with the minimum amount of money going to these guys, and they all come out and perform like they're on a Lamar Jackson contract here. It's kind of incredible to watch. You see guys like Steven Kwan who makes contact. They don't strike out. Steven Kwan makes contact with everything. They all run the bases hard. It could be a routine single, and they're running to second base until someone tells them not to, or until they figure out that they can't do it. That's how like hustle driven they are. Terry Francona is a great manager. And I think if Cleveland pitches well in this series, like if they pitch how they have for the past like second half of the season, I think they'll win because I don't think Tampa's order is good enough to come up against that, especially if you've got Bieber firing, Tristan McKenzie, who has a lot of potential, and then Cal Quantrill has been up and down, but still, and then you got that bullpen that's been insane lately. But yeah, and then Tampa has some pitching questions because yes, you've got
Tampa
McClanahan.
Tampa will be interesting because I don't know if you know, but Tyler Glass now threw about 45 pitches, I think a week ago against Cleveland, and I
Yeah,
think they're trying to get him back in the playoff rotation. And if they have Tyler Glass now, that is huge because he is a frontline number one ace, and the Rays didn't have that last
he's
year. And
dominant. Yeah.
they didn't have, a number one like Garrett Cole, Walker Buehler, even though he's not pitching it, they didn't have that like frontline guy that you can just rely on for a good start. And they lost to the Red Sox because the Red Sox had an awesome offense.
Yeah, exactly. And I just wanted to say for the viewers, it is Shane versus Shane game one. So I will
And
be
Shane
watching that
Vertun.
very close. So those are two really good pitchers right there, especially if they do what they're supposed to be doing. McClanahan was lights out pretty much all year. He had a couple stumbles and then got injured. But then Bieber, we all know what he can do. But I had a question for you about Glasnow.
Mhm.
Since he just came off injury, I think he only had like one start and threw, like you said, 45 pitches, I think it was. Do
Mhm.
you think they start him for a game and kind of keep him on a short leash, or do you think they kind of save him for like a long relief out of the bullpen?
I mean, the Rays are capable of anything. Like, they could open it with some guy who throws sidearm and then bring in Glass now and have him
Yeah,
throw
they
4 innings.
love the opener.
They love the opener. I mean, that's why I personally love the Rays, and I kind of love the Guardians now because they just find creative ways to get outs and
Yeah,
get through innings, which is
that should
really
be
interesting.
interesting. Yeah.
But with Cleveland, I mean, first off, I'm just gonna say, I mean, I think they might be the new Tampa Bay Rays. I mean, they had
Honestly, yeah.
spent no money, and they just recycle pitchers like nobody's business. I mean, they trade they trade away Mike Clevenger, he's not even that good anymore.
No,
And
really,
they
he's really
get
not.
they get all these really good prospects. They get Josh Naylor. They got Austin Hedges, who's an awesome
Josh
defensive
Miller.
catcher. They get some more prospects. They trade Corey Kluber away. They get Emmanuel Clase. Are you kidding me?
That's
And a
ridiculous.
washed Corey Kluber too. Like not even like he wasn't even that good anymore. They trade away Carlos Carrasco and Francisco Lindor. And obviously, trading Lindor, that's a big deal, but they got some really good
Yeah,
players.
it's like they sold like a tanking team and then ended up winning the division. It's kind of insane to see.
It's crazy. It's crazy. So, um, they get rid of Lindor, they get rid of Carrasco, shed all this payroll money, but then they get Ahmed Rosario and Andres Gimenez. Andres Gimenez was an all-star this year, and they
Yeah.
still got more prospects. But they recycle all of these pitchers, just get rid of them and just replace them with better guys. I mean, their rotation is still awesome. They've got Shane Bieber, they've got Tristan McKenzie, who's been awesome, and then they've got Cal Contra, who I think is a solid three.
He's a
Uh,
good start. Yeah, he's a solid starter. And he's good. He's kind of built for a playoff game because he's not a big strikeout pitcher. Big kind of ground out, fly out guy, which if he can keep that pitch count low and not let the Rays hit it out of the ballpark, which they're not a big home run team by any means. So if he could do that, then he could probably have a pretty good start.
Yeah, I mean, overall, like my viewpoint on this series is it's going to be really interesting to see these teams compete against one another because they're really similar. Like they have
Yeah.
pretty good pitching, but their offenses are not that strong. They're both really gritty. But both of these teams will be in trouble, I think, once they make the next step.
Yeah. It's gonna be a dogfight for sure. And then now with that, we move on to Toronto versus Seattle. And this, honestly, I am most excited for this series. Part of the reason because watching a playoff game in Toronto is like that's one of the best atmospheres for a playoff game there is. Like that's gonna be pretty electric to watch. And both of these teams have some star power. So like there could be a couple slugfests. That's what I'm rooting for in this series, considering I've enjoyed watching them both all year, and I will root for either of them to go on in the AL. But I mean, like, yeah, this one's gonna be fun. Alek Manoah versus Luis Castillo in game one. That's gonna be interesting to see how that shakes out.
Yeah, I mean, Castillo, I've been so big on him for so long, and I'm so happy he finally kind of broke out and had his huge season. I mean, he has the nastiest changeup probably in baseball. He's throwing 99, and he finally gets on a really solid team. And I'm happy for the Mariners. I was really big on them coming into this season. They're a really smart organization. The year before, they almost made the playoffs, and they had a horrible team. And they were kind of like the Guardians. I was like, how does this happen?
Yeah, exactly.
Um,
How the fuck is this team in the
and
playoffs?
they got Jesse Winker, they added Eugenio Suarez, Julio Rodriguez is just that guy. Uh,
Yeah,
and then it's going to be great to see Robbie Ray against his former team. He started out really rough, and then I wrote about it. He really recovered, and he's
yeah.
the number one ace.
He's
So
good, yeah, and they've got so I would assume it goes Castillo, Ray, and then Logan
Gilbert,
Gilbert, yeah.
Gilbert,
Which I mean, that's a tough rotation to face. I
yeah.
watched, I watched, I've actually watched a good amount of Mariners games. They're the only team on at 10 all the time, or
Mhm.
one of them. But I see Gilbert's like pretty electric. You don't hear about him that much, but he's got some stuff. Yeah. So and then you've got Manoa. I don't even
Manoah, Gosman, and then
Gosman. Who goes third for
Barrios,
them?
Barrios or Stripling probably.
That's going to be interesting how that happens because Stripling came. He's just like new as a starter, not he's not even always a starter. He's a
Yeah,
bullpen guy sometimes. And Barrios has had a horrible season.
he has. I believe in Jose Barrios. Like I think he's good. He's been better at home. It really does suck they gave him like $130 million
That
contract.
really, yeah, that
He just
hurts.
follows it up, and they traded like 2 top 100 prospects for him.
Yeah, like they gave
Uh,
away some good stuff for him.
so they gave up a lot for him, and they really invested in him, and he just hasn't been that great this year. I mean, I kept trying to like make excuses and be like, he's not, he's just getting back into the mix of things, or he still has really good stuff, but he just wasn't that good this year. So if you're gonna throw Barrios, you throw him at home because he's better at home. But Stripling's been great this year. So I think
Griffin
the
has been good.
have the
He's been good to watch. And he kind of stepped into a role that, I mean, I guess he was supposed to be a starter all along, but he stepped in and he took it well, and he came in and he's better than Barrios right now, especially. But yeah, and also the last thing I wanted to say on this was that my pick is Toronto to win this because I think Toronto's got a good lineup, but like we said, the pitching holes after Gossman and Manoah can kind of get a little shaky with them, and especially how good their bullpen performs later because that's been kind of a
it's been a little shaky. They
yeah,
get
it's been a little shaky.
Romano as a closer, but yeah.
Yeah, exactly. But the thing I was gonna say was if Bichette, Guerrero, Kirk, Chapman, all those
Springer.
if they hit like they can,
Yeah.
they're gonna it doesn't matter how they pitch, they're gonna win games.
Well, and I mean the huge thing about this wild card is the home team hosts all 3 games. And
Yeah.
I have Toronto as well. I agree with you. Seattle's like I have them like they're good enough to make the playoffs. Like that's how good they are, but their lineup just isn't good enough to go deep. Like they
Yeah.
just don't really have like Julio's really good, but he's in his rookie year. Ty France is really good, but they don't really have like that guy. And Toronto has a few of them. Like Springer is awesome in the
Oh,
playoffs.
yeah. How did I forget
Yes,
Springer? Yeah.
Springer, like, dude, like he's one of the best playoff hitters in playoff history. Like he's insane. Guerrero's awesome. Matt Chapman's been great in the playoffs.
Yeah.
Bichette, I mean, this lineup is a nightmare. It's a literal nightmare, and that
Yeah,
Colorado
exactly.
crowd is crazy. So
Yeah, that one's gonna be fun. I'm excited for that one. And this one, the next before Philadelphia, St. Louis, which I guess is that would be okay to watch, but I mean it might be a little boring. But now we got Mets Padres. That's gonna be cool. Especially because I hear for some reason I talk shit about the Mets on Twitter, and then all of a sudden my entire timeline is like me being a part of Mets Twitter, which I hate. So I see all these like Mets fans, like Mets fan Jake 21 and whatever, and they're all panicking about how they're playing the Padres and they're gonna lose and complaining about how they lost to the Braves and whatever. But the Padres, they don't look that good.
you're so right. I mean,
Yeah,
they've really been struggling. I mean,
yeah,
people
they're
are
like
hyping them up, but they've been struggling. They really have. I
they
mean,
don't look great.
they don't.
Soto's obviously incredible, but it's like he is
Yep.
not lighting the world on fire by any means
Yeah,
in
he
San
hasn't been good.
Diego.
He
Josh
hasn't been good.
Josh Bell's a good first baseman. Brandon Drury's a good utility guy, but none of them have come and played like they did where they were before.
Yeah, I mean, Drury's been pretty good for San Diego. I mean, there are just so many interesting things in this series. One, because the Mets, like you ask yourself, all right, they they implode every year. I believe this. They did it
They
last
do. Oh
Um, you
yeah.
know, they've semi imploded by, losing the division to the Braves. Do they now choke it away by losing to a struggling Padres team? I think that's a possibility. I think it could happen. Um, but the Padres just aren't like strong coming in here. I mean, like you said, I mean, you covered it all. They have, they need Soto to step up. They need Machado to step up. They have a good lineup. Like, Grisham can even produce. Cronenworth solid. Josh
Yeah.
Bell. They have good bats. It's just like, can they do it? And
That's what I had written down was like you have the two, like I had Soto, Cronenworth, Bell, Drury, three of those are trade deadline acquisitions.
yeah.
Machado's always going to be good. He's a legend. Like he's a rock star. Dude does everything. But
Mhm.
it's a matter of if that supporting cast shows up. Because like you've seen it, all of them can do it. Even Profar can hit a couple bombs. He's a good player. Sung Kim, he's been doing well
Yeah.
lately too. But it's like they've got to put it together because if they don't, then they look awful.
Yeah, I mean, it's like this, and the same goes for the pitching. Like, you know, will Musgrove do? He's a low velocity pitchers usually don't do well in the playoffs. So, like,
No.
will Musgrove be elite in the playoffs? I don't know. Yu Darvish has been like pretty good this season, but he's definitely not pitching up to his potential. And then Blake Snell's been a disaster, but he has really good stuff. So like
Yeah,
those three guys are all they all are have the potential to be really good elite playoff starters. They have the potential. They
yeah,
haven't lived up to it so far. Will it happen? That goes for the bullpen too. I have no idea what's going to happen with the Padres bullpen, but
exactly. And the thing is, well, especially with the way we talked about Hader earlier, but like that's been kind of a disaster for him.
yeah.
But I was gonna say the only thing stopping me from slamming the Mets to win this series and just like closing the book and saying it's over is the fact that, like you said, the Mets implode every year.
The Mets implode and the Padres have enough bats where like they could get on Scherzer, they could get on DeGrom and kind of like ruffle the Mets and get in their head and kind of because one thing kind of off track, but the Mets offense is problematic in this playoffs because one thing I saw is the Braves struck out 31% of the time in that last series. Mets struck out 23% of the time, but the Braves had more extra base hits. Like their lineup, the Mets lineup is not really built for playoffs. Like they don't have a lot of guys who hit home runs and extra base hits. It's just
Yeah.
I don't know how to explain it, but like their lineup's kind of in trouble for the
And
playoffs.
if the pitchers lock down Pete Alonso, then they're really in trouble.
Yeah, they are in trouble.
That's a spark plug for them. I say like if Lindor gets something going, yeah, that's gonna work. But like if Pete Alonso gets shut down, I feel like that's just deflating for the whole offense itself and for the whole team. But I tell you what, for all of our bettors out there, a free pick is the game Max Scherzer starts, they're gonna win. Because
Yeah,
playoff Max Scherzer is a fucking demon. He's
yeah.
just ridiculous.
Another great pick is I would well, we'll say that at the end of the show. But yeah, I mean Scherzer in the playoffs, Scherzer DeGrom, like if the Mets lose this playoff series, like that's embarrassing. Like let's just
That
say
is
it. Like
embarrassing if they
it's
lose
embarrassing,
that. All
you
right,
know.
now our final wild card series before we get into some World Series favorites or picks. Philadelphia, St. Louis, and I left least amount of time for this series because it deserves the least amount of time.
Yeah.
And Cards are feeling it right now, and I don't want to take anything away because Nolan Arenado might be one of my favorite players in the MLB. He's fucking awesome.
Mhm.
And the whole Pujols, Wainwright's pitching like he's 25 right now, and it's awesome.
Yeah,
Love
last
Adam
two.
Wainwright. I don't know what Pujols is going to do in the playoffs. I don't know if he's going to play that much. We put a lefty up against him, and I think you could do well. But otherwise, neither of these teams, like the Cards, have obviously had that whole legacy thing rallying around them all year,
Mhm.
which is I feel like it's kind of lifted them up.
Yeah.
But otherwise, they're both like not very good, like
Yeah. No,
very great teams.
you're spot on. Like the Phillies have some really good players, but like they also like they're like they're 7, 8, 9 is like horrendous. You know, like they've invested like a lot in like Real Muto, Castellanos, Harper, Schwarber. I don't know if Hoskins gets paid a lot, but like those guys are really good. But then they have some just kind of like not really
Like,
scrubs, but just like not playoff players in their lineup. And that goes for the same with like the Cardinals starting pitching. Like Wainwright's really good, and I think he's like a fine number one starter to have in the playoffs. But then like it's their 2, 3 is probably going to be like Jordan Montgomery and Jose Quintana, who have both
Quintana's starting game one. Quintana's starting tomorrow.
yeah, like I mean Quintana's pitched well this year. Like he has a 3.16 ERA, but like let's not confuse ourselves here.
Another low velocity pitcher too.
Yeah, low velocity pitcher
That's
and
three
like
low velocity pitchers because Montgomery nor Wainwright have any.
yeah, Montgomery's like 95, but still kind of low
But is he
velocity for
90?
the playoffs.
He can get up there. I
Like
thought he was like a
94,
92.
95.
But
But again with Quintana, let's not confuse ourselves. I mean, this guy was struggling to find a job, and the Pirates signed him, and he pitched really well out of nowhere.
yeah,
So again, this is kind of like the Guardians Rays, where it's like whoever moves on here is really gonna be
yeah,
screwed
it's
next
a
round.
dogfight. It's kind of just living to fight another day. At least I
I
think so.
I think that the one thing I'll say about St. Louis is I think they have a pretty dangerous lineup. Like Tommy Edmonds, really good. Arenado, Goldschmidt, Tyler O'Neill when he's
Oh,
back
I
is
forgot about Goldschmidt. Yeah, he's the
um
should be the MVP.
yeah, Gold and then Yachty, we'll see. We'll see what Yachty and Pujols do in the playoffs. Like maybe some magic will happen. Who knows?
Who knows? Yeah,
Um, but yeah, I mean, it's like Rays Guardians. Like, I'm kind of undecided on who will win the series because Philly does have a great 1-2 with Nolan Wheeler. I mean, that's a really solid 1-2. No idea who they're going to start game 3 if there is one, but it's kind of I mean, it's kind of like I guess I'll take the Cardinals, but it's not a very
I'm taking the Cards too. Yeah.
I don't know.
But Yeah, I mean, there's not much else, there's not much else on that series, but now I'm excited for this part. Our World Series predictions. And so each of us get to have one favorite. So one team that you think's gonna win it,
Mhm.
and then or like one team you think's gonna win, like actually is kind of a top team, and then another dark horse, one that you think is kind of frisky and might sneak in there,
Mhm.
like a lower seed. And so my favorite, call me a broken record, is the Los Angeles Dodgers.
Yep.
I think, and I think how exactly it's gonna go is Houston's gonna go to the World Series and play them. And this would be kind of weird if Houston lost 2 World Series in a row. But I think it's gonna be Dodgers, Houston, and the Dodgers go in and smoke them in revenge of that 2017 year. And then my dark horse pick is a team from earlier, and it is the Toronto Blue Jays.
Mhm.
Simply because of, like we said earlier, like the power that they have, the firepower that they have, especially their crowd going in the playoffs. They don't lose many home games in the playoffs, but yeah, and they've just been fun to watch all year. So I'm really excited to see how that shakes out. And if they go up against Houston, I think that will be a bloodbath.
Yeah, so I'm gonna go the opposite view. I've got the Astros as my favorite. If you told me if there was one team you could put money on to win the World Series, it would be the Astros. First off, they've made the ALDS 6 or 7 years in a row. I'm not sure what the stat is. And second off, they have the best starting rotation in all of baseball. They've got
Yeah,
Verlander, Framber Valdez, Lance McCullers, Christian Javier, and Jose Urquidy. Those are five like playoff starters. Like Urquidy could be a 3 on a playoff team. Like that's how deep their rotation
yeah,
is.
they're really good.
I mean, it's crazy how good their rotation is. And then their lineup is just a machine. It's the machine as always. You know, you got Gurriel, Altuve, Tucker, Bregman,
And they've
Pena.
all been there before, so they all know exactly what it's like, and they know how to play playoff baseball. As much as I hate them for the whole cheating or whatever, but they are tough as nails to play. I remember watching; it was really hard to watch my guys go up against them last year because it was like, when are these at bats going to end? They just get on base, they hustle, and they work counts. They make pitchers freak out. It's
And
like they are truly, like they're a playoff built team because they've
they're
been
just a
there so
machine.
much.
They're a machine. And shout out to the Houston crowd too, because that is a tough place to play. They are loud,
It is a tough place to
great
play.
playoff atmosphere. And they're going to be at home all season. Yeah, I mean, all playoffs. They
Yeah,
have
they
the
are because
besides if they
they
play
got
the
the record over New York.
yeah, besides if they play for the Dodgers. The reason I have Houston over the Dodgers is because the Dodgers starting rotation I don't think is good enough to win a World Series. They've got Urias and they've got Kershaw. Tony Gonsolin's up in the air. I don't even know if he's the number 3 on a playoff team because his peripherals against good teams are bad. Like he doesn't pitch well against good teams.
Yeah,
They don't have Walker Bueller. So
that's tough.
the Dodgers were my World Series pick at the end of the or at the beginning of the year, and I'd love to ride them out, but they don't have Walker Bueller, so I just don't think their pitching is elite enough. But their lineup is just insane. So
Yeah,
with Freddie Freeman and Mookie Betts, like, are you kidding?
and Trey Turner, yeah, it's ridiculous.
And then so my dark horse, to all the bettors out there, the Guardians are plus 2,700 to to win the World Series. Um,
That would hurt if that happened to
now
me.
I don't I anything one what we've learned in the playoffs with the Braves last year is anything can happen. And I think the Guardians will win round 1. Maybe they can beat the Yankees. I don't think they can beat the Astros, but
No,
you know, I just love that value. I mean, $10 to win 270 when
it is good value.
A Braves team without Acuna won the World Series last year, like who wasn't even that good. Like, why not? You know what I mean? Why not? I love the Blue Jays too. I don't even consider them like a dark horse. I mean, their lineup's insane, and
Yeah, I
and
don't even consider them a dark horse. Really, I just did because they were a lower. I just did them because they were a lower seed, and it was kind of like
yeah,
playing with house money at that point. And I
I,
would have done the Padres, but I don't think they're good enough.
mhm. But the message to all the bettors is like, you never know what's going to happen in these playoffs. Like anything
Oh,
can
you
happen.
don't. Yeah. I
So
mean, like because like normally for me it's in playoffs, single game bets if I really like the pitcher or like I really like the pitching matchup or something. But series bets, like took Astros last year in the World Series matchup, but it's like you really never know what's gonna happen. So my
yeah,
best advice to any better out there is if you see it like a series, like a lopsided series with like a minus 300 and you think it's gonna hit, don't take it
mhm,
because you're gonna be really upset if it doesn't, and there's a good chance it doesn't. Underdogs, the way to make money in the playoffs is normally underdogs.
yeah.
Braves. You saw that last year. But yeah,
I mean, the better team doesn't always win. Like, it's just as simple as that.
yeah,
Astros are better
exactly.
than
It's playoff baseball. It's different. You're not like you don't have a set rotation set in place like that. That's like the biggest thing is in pitching. Who can manage it the best? Who can play every day? Who can not get hurt, especially.
Mhm.
But yeah, I mean, um, you got anything else? Any other picks you want to share? Or anything?
I mean, I would say, like, I don't know how, like, analytically, like, people know about, like, the baseball teams, but usually in the playoffs, like, teams with analytics fail because, they have these, like, statistical models and stuff that they calculate, like, the
Oh, goes
rate,
out the window in playoffs.
you know what I mean? But, like, the playoffs are so unpredictable that you can't, like, type into some computer program and, like, calculate, like, what's gonna happen. Like, it's the playoffs are just so unpredictable, and
Yep.
so you just have no idea what's gonna happen. My biggest advice would be don't bet on favorites. Like, don't take,
Yeah,
like, Dodgers plus 300 to win the World Series or, like, Astros plus 400 because, like, anything can happen, like I
there's no
said.
value there. Yeah.
There really isn't, in my opinion.
Yeah, but yeah, I really enjoyed this. This was awesome, and maybe when the World Series comes, we could do another one. We're running out of time here because I am a cheapskate and do not have Zoom Pro. So I want to thank you for coming on, Jack. This was awesome. I'm so glad we got to do this.
Yeah, it's great.
You are one of the best in the business on Twitter, and if you haven't, go follow Jack McKenny on Twitter and go follow the World of Sports podcast of Jack McKenny. Because he does some great work over there and is very, very knowledgeable on the sport of baseball. There you have it. If you want to bet on some of our stuff, do it. If you just want to listen to hear about some ball, then that's good too. But yeah, all right, signing off.
Appreciate you having me, bro.
Yeah.